Hi, long time no see. Kind of been a while since my last video. A lot of that's due to a bunch of life changes that's kind of happened these past couple of months that I'm currently still adjusting to as we speak. And I was thinking what better video to do right now than a Peacemaker video. Now, I didn't watch Peacemaker season 1 while it was airing. I kind of just started like maybe a couple weeks ago as season 2 was going on. So expect there to be a cut in of me talking about how the season finale went and kind of how I felt about it. But with that being said, it's great to be back making videos for you guys. If you're new around here and you don't know who I am, I'm Mercy Unscripted. Welcome to the channel. Please hit the subscribe button. I make deep analysis and breakdown videos and video essays about your favorite TV shows and films and pretty much anything that just interests me. And for right now, that has been Peacemaker. So let's get into this video. Since it's been a while, I'm gonna go over how I do my review processes, which I break things down into these 5 categories, which is story, where I take out the characters and their names and everything and just see how well the story works in itself. Second being characters, where I talk about my favorite character, my least favorite character, or just whatever character interests me and actually left a lasting impression on me. Third being genre, where I talk about the genre tags that this film or TV show has been given and see how well it actually performs in all of these tags. Next being pacing, where I talk about how fast or slow the pacing was. It's kind of self-explanatory and also very subjective, so I don't really spend too much time on the pacing. And last but not least, I talk about the visuals. That is the last category and probably my favorite because I love talking about color grading and cool shots and action scenes and stuff like that. I'm an editor, so I kind of gush over this stuff. I'll try not to too much in this video. But now that we got all that out of the way, let's jump into the first category, which is story.
They call you Peacemaker.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
The story of Peacemaker is about this character who is trying to come to terms with what heroism truly means to him and how his current actions conflict the vow that he made to himself many years ago, which was, I will have peace no matter how many people I have to kill in order to get it. He battles this while stopping a secret alien invasion, traveling to a parallel dimension, and learning how to deal with the complexities of family relationships and friendship bonds. Now, on paper, this sounds like a very simple and straight to the point kind of story. Very well rounded. We can see where the internal conflicts will come from and the external conflicts will come from. It's very balanced in that way. But the way that James Gunn goes about telling this story, the way that he brings these characters to life through all of these actions and all of these story arcs is truly what makes this story phenomenal. He brought a completely unique vision to a hero story that I feel like is changing the playing field of how lesser known characters are being seen on the big screen and small screen at this point. Giving your character such a strict belief system in the form of a vow and then having his actions actually conflict against that vow creates stunning tension for this character going out and brings a level of curiosity that'll make someone want to stick around to see how they actually come out on the other side. At least that's what captivated me the most, because for a vow like I will keep peace no matter how many people I have to kill, yet you want to be a hero, is very interesting and a compelling reason for me to stick around. Not to mention what he may actually learn along the way about himself and the people around him, and including the world that he lives in with all the alien invasion and alternate dimensional travel. It just sounds like a very fun, adventurous story that anyone would be happy to watch. Now, moving on to the next category, which is genre. And I feel like Peacemaker season 1 and 2 kind of fit perfectly within all of its genre tags, and it's kind of amazing that it does that. I'm really surprised at how well it works in every category, especially superhero. Because like I said in the story section, it kind of sounds like a simple, straightforward story. However, this is definitely not by any means a traditional superhero story. But the cool thing is, it's also not a cliche anti-hero story either, which I genuinely thought at the beginning this is what that was gonna be. And now that I'm thinking about it, it really kind of resembles Thunderbolts in a little bit of a way. Chris mostly, and also Yelena specifically. Let me explain. The reason I'm drawing comparisons between these two characters is because I see similarities in their visions of being a hero. In Thunderbolts, we see Yelena want to become a more mainstream hero. She wants to be on TV, she wants to be something more front-facing, to use her words, out in the public saving people, because all she's been doing most of her life has just been killing bad people, and she wants to change that. Now on Peacemaker's hand, he's done essentially the same thing, where he just kills bad people, and I think that's mostly what his vow attunes to, where I don't care how many people I have to kill to get it, and in his mind he feels like that's only the bad people. Now, in his version of heroism, killing enough bad people will give him peace. However, that doesn't innately make you a hero, which Chris will eventually start to realize throughout his character arc. Now, the huge differences between these two characters is that they both kind of have a similar background in the sense that they just kill bad people to make the world a better place. However, their outlooks on these are two completely different outlooks. Yelena knows that she doesn't feel good with this kind of life. She just kills, and really doesn't feel fulfilling at all, and also doesn't think of herself as a hero. Whereas Peacemaker, he kills all these bad people, and in his head he is a hero. He believes that his reputation is more than what it actually is, and throughout the first season we kind of saw that. He walked around believing that everyone knew who he was, and hardly anyone did. And the people that do, they kind of misinterpreted his image, and they kind of just see him as that one guy who kills a lot of people in a costume and is racist. They know him, but in a very bad way. I don't know, I kind of really just drew this comparison because I saw these two characters with very similar backgrounds in the way that they are both trained killers and just kill bad people. And one is an anti-hero story, while as the other one has the setup, the correct setup for an anti-hero story, but is actively not being one. And that's the way that James Gunn kind of captured my interest for this, because he's going about this story in a very different way than what's traditionally done. And for that reason, I think it excels in the superhero genre tag. Moving on to the next tag, which is dark humor. This show has incredibly good dark humor. It's so batshit crazy because 9 times out of 10, I never know what the fuck they're gonna say next. And it can get so deep and dark and then be as wholesome and genuine as well. And it's so cool to see that kind of duality in this kind of superhero show. But this show kind of has a balance, and we get so far off the deep end, talking about titties all the way to fucking Nazis and gorilla chainsaws and shit like that. James Gunn really nailed it on the head with a lot of this dark humor. The rest of the tags for this show are like the common ones that come with a superhero show, such as action, and the action was great in this TV show. It was so good, and honestly, I feel like too many people was expecting giant needle drops that we would get in like Superman or like a big movie, but you gotta remember this is like a lower budget TV show, so it's not like we're gonna get those kinds of fights, even though we still did get something similar with the whole butterfly fight ending scenes. Those were great. Next tag being adventure. This show was great with adventure. We went very much all over the place in so many different settings. Next tag, comedy. Comedy was good. Comedy was already there. I was already talking about the dark comedy and how they balanced this wholesome comedy along with the dark comedy as well. Crime is there, drama is for sure there. The whole thing with Adebayo and her girlfriend Chris and Harcourt, even Myrn in the first season, there was some good suspenseful drama. And last but not least, fantasy and sci-fi. Obviously it's fiction, so none of this shit is real. I think Peacemaker excels perfectly in all of its genre tags, to the point it added a very unique spin on the superhero genre as a whole. Next up, we're going to be talking about characters, and the first character I'm going to talk about is Peacemaker, aka Chris Smith. Chris is a very great character. He has a great moral compass and honestly has a very likable personality. I love how no one's actually ever ready for this guy, mentally or physically. He goes and saying the most batshit craziest things and is so dead ass about it. I can only recall maybe one time where he was like genuinely being sarcastic. No one takes him completely seriously, even though he kind of presents this very macho, tough exterior 24/7. but he has a dash of like a goofy, childish side. Like in episode 1 of season 1, he was literally just sitting on his bed crying, just beating the shit out of himself, talking crazy. And then Adrian comes in and just starts talking to him. And he's like, "Are you crying?" He's like, "No, bro, I'm fucking doing muscle exercises with my face." It was like that kind of shit, like where he takes himself too serious and he's just being goofy. And if it was anyone other than Adrian, they would have called his bullshit. But like you just kind of accept that. I'm sitting here like, what the fuck? Like it was so nonsensical. But despite all that, he's genuinely sincere. And I also didn't take him that seriously most of the time until he starts fighting. And the way James Gunn writes Chris, it's like he's a walking red herring, because you never know what you're gonna get with this guy. He's exactly who you think he is 1 second throughout the series, but you would easily forget that he's a trained killer with incredible abilities, because he's always spouting nonsense 90% of the time. And it always catches me off guard, because I feel like James Gunn intentionally wrote him that way so that people can purposefully underestimate him. But the main reason that Peacemaker works for me is because of his internal conflicts. Chris has surrounded his whole identity around his philosophy that he will create peace no matter how many people he has to kill to get it, which to him is rooted in such good nature, but actually is so warped and innately evil if you really think about it. It's only when he goes through like so many various consequences and circumstances where Chris is forced to choose between saving his loved ones or fighting for what he actually believes in, and that's when he starts to realize that he's been wrong this entire time, and that everything that he fought for is flawed, and that he's not the hero he actually wants to be. And that gets shown to us in a perfect moment where Peacemaker is sitting across the room, bloodied and beaten up by his older brother Keith, while he watches as his friends hold him down seconds before they're about to kill his older brother, and a traumatic flashback is playing through his mind. And there we get to see a breathtaking performance by John Cena, and it truly captivates his range as an actor, because those next few sentences out of his mouth had me speechless. The way that he was able to convey that exact emotion of like, what are we doing? All we do is kill. Like, how do we become like this? Why are we always killing people? Like that breakdown, oh my gosh, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It was so good. And that was the moment that Peacemaker finally broke and everything spiraled downhill for him internally. And James Gunn did a really good job of leading up to this moment by giving us like breadcrumbs of foreshadowing for this exact moment, but this was definitely that breaking point. And for a character who has a very strong belief system from a vow that he created for himself a long time ago, when a person loses that one thing that's driving them, the one thing that they truly believe in, everything else snowballs. They start questioning their whole life, their choices, their purpose, and eventually they become lost. And I'm glad I stuck around with this show all the way to the point that I did, because I was super curious since episode 1 how Chris was going to grow past this, because James Gunn did a really good job at pushing this internal conflict since early as episode 1. But really my favorite was episode 2, when he confronted his own father, and we got introduced to Augie for the first time, learning that he is a racist, and it kind of really fueled Chris's inner conflict, because once we learn how Augie operates, it kind of just presents the question, if the man who raised him is evil, what does that say about the peace that he's fighting for? And despite how his father treated Chris throughout the entire show, he definitely had a huge influence on what heroism means to Chris. I'm very curious to see how the season finale is going to wrap all of this up and maybe showcase how the version of peace that Chris has always wanted is going to change for the better of everyone and not just himself. Hey, so editing Mercy here, and the season finale finally dropped. And I'm gonna say it didn't really blow over the way that everyone thought it was going to. I genuinely think after watching this episode that Chris's character arc is actually finished. He came full circle, and with the help of his friends and some very, very powerful and emotional words, was able to pull him out of that very deep despair pit hole that he was in, and that kept him wrapped up in that vision of peace that he thought he wanted. But that peace that he really wanted was actually freedom. Freedom from being controlled by these organizations that made him kill on demand, that wanted him to kill at a moment's notice, whether it's Argus or Amanda Waller. And this is something that is spread across his entire friend group. They all wanted that same freedom, and they made him come to that realization that when you act as yourself and do what you think is right in your heart, then nothing can truly go wrong. And that's something that adds really instilled in Chris that helped him get out of that during that emotional scene. That scene was so powerful and it was so good that I myself almost started tearing up after like that kind of intense conversation between a large group of friends. That I feel like a group of friends who really care about each other should have that conversation at one point in time whenever they see one of their friends going down the wrong path. But yeah, I do believe that Chris's character arc is actually finished. It came full circle and he no longer is being controlled. He has liberated himself to the point where now he can be happy with the person that he truly is. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be all right, because as we see at the end of the season finale, he still has to deal with the consequences of what he did in his past while still acting under the belief of his vow, which is killing Rick Flag Jr. And so he still has to deal with those consequences by being sent to salvation. And I kind of feel like this new arc will probably be concluded in a different DC project, because as of right now, James Gunn has came out and said that he has no plans for a Peacemaker season 3 at the moment. So Peacemaker will probably show up in a different project where they'll probably deal with salvation. And I say it's finished because when a character normally conquers their internal conflict, there's only really two routes that that character can take from then on. One being they live long enough to pass down that wisdom onto a predecessor or a younger generation, or they take another route where they selflessly sacrifice themselves and die. And I'm not saying that's always the case. A character can still live on past these things. It's just without an internal conflict, it can be very repetitive and boring to watch. With that being said, I do think the season finale wrapped up pretty well. Emotionally, I think a lot of people were expecting a big action heavy cameo heavy type of episode and cliffhanger maybe. And me personally, I didn't really know what to expect, but emotionally everything kind of panned out. And we left things in a very open-ended way to see how these characters can move on in the DCEU and where Chris is gonna end up next. I'm definitely mixed when it came to the season finale. I'm not hating on it, but it's definitely not something that blew my mind. Now, throughout season 1 and season 2, I didn't really connect to a lot of these characters. Maybe Adrian I gravitated to the most, and that was mostly because of his comedy and humor type, which is hilarious. And I think a lot of people kind of associate him with a psychopath, but genuinely to me, it kind of just seemed like he had autism. He couldn't pick up on social cues or social awkwardness and the tension between people. He didn't know what was really right and wrong. He just didn't really know how to handle a conversation or when and when not to pick up on certain body language, I would say. So it kind of made things like very awkward. You can easily tell that his like early development years were very stunted. But he makes some very hilarious jokes, and every time he's on screen, I genuinely could never stop laughing. Adrian is awesome. Amelia's great too. I just kind of feel like we didn't get a lot of her personal past outside of the Rick Flag best friend and, you know, that romance kind of thing that they had, but we didn't get too much of her personal life either. And that is kind of something that I think would have benefited her character a lot more and probably strengthened her connection with Chris. Other than that, her personality is a great contrast to everyone else in the group throughout season 1 and season 2. She definitely gave off that character that absolutely knows what the fuck she's doing, but is also very emotionally disconnected from herself. And I think her being friends with Chris is like the best way to explore that. I actually kind of think that it would be cool to see Adebayo help her explore those kind of emotional sides that she kind of suppresses, but we didn't really get too much of that. Speaking of Adebayo, she wasn't really a character I cared about, especially during the first season. She was a little bit too relatable in the sense that the secondhand embarrassment was definitely strong with every sentence she kind of talked throughout the first season. I'm just like, why are we speaking about this? Why is this going on for so long? Please stop talking most of the time. She became a very prevalent character towards season 2, especially when we got to see her backstory into her relationship with Key. The only thing that kind of bothered me was that her emotional growth and her character growth was kind of prolonged a little bit, longer than what it actually needed to be, because halfway through the first season, we see her become this new character. She came in as a person who wasn't actually about this kind of life, about this secret agent operative life, but then slowly became more attuned to it and better friends with the group, thus separating herself further and further from Key and the actual life that she envisioned. Now, when she full sended and realized this is who she actually is and this is what she actually wants to do with her life, we didn't see her deal with her relationship with Key and finally break it off until episode 8 of season 2, until the season finale, which is kind of crazy because I kind of think it didn't need to go on for that long. But it was so much in the background of Chris's story that it just kind of faded away. Like, you don't really think about it too much because it was like mentioned here and there, but they don't focus on it a lot, which is kind of one of the problems I kind of have with the show, but I'll talk more about that at the end. Eponymous is another character I definitely didn't give a lot of attention to, especially towards the first season and even the second season that much. I'm not saying he's like a bad character or anything, he just isn't someone that piques my interest. I'm just not the kind of person that gets attached to like the coward's journey trope of a character, but he does have some good moments. I will definitely give him that, like the whole chainsaw gorilla moment from season 1 and the butterflies and shit, that was fucking cool as shit. And he does have some solidly good humor sometimes throughout season 2. But other than that, his relationship with Eagly is also pretty funny too. I'll give you that. But like, I just never really personally gravitated towards him. All right, now that we're done with the characters, let's move on to the next category, which is pacing. Only time I actually felt like the pacing was a little off was during the end of season 1. I felt like it sprinted its way to the finale when the main group had only gotten the information about the cow just one episode prior. And I feel like it's really just a result of the contemporary style of like episode structure nowadays because of streaming. But I'm sure like we can all agree that 8 episodes is never really enough for a TV show at all. Like, bring back 12 episode series, 24 episode series, please. For season 1, definitely needed at least 1 extra episode in between episodes 7 and 8 just to slow things down and build up more tension for that final fight. The pacing definitely would have benefited from that. That's all I really have to say about the pacing. Season 2 was fine. Let's move on to the last category, which is visuals. And the first thing from episode 1 of watching the show that I realized about the visuals of the show is how documentary style shooting it is. It kind of gave like that reality TV show almost kind of vibe. There was a running gun type of shooting where the cam was just very shaky, and it just kind of threw me off guard because I'm not used to seeing that, especially in superhero shows. Maybe a little bit from The Boys, but like you don't typically see it that often. Another thing that stood out to me from season 1 was that this kind of didn't really look like a James Gunn project. Now, I kind of discussed maybe in Superman what a James Gunn project typically looks like, but for the most part, they're normally like really saturated, crazy needle pin drops with crazy song choices and stuff like that. This show definitely had that. And the comparison from season 1 to season 2 visually, it changes a lot. Season 2 looks way better, and I think the reason for that is because just timing of everything. Season 1 of Peacemaker came out in 2022. That's before Guardians 3 and the latest Superman movie. So James Gunn's style has drastically improved and been honed since the first season of Peacemaker. And I think that can be shown between both seasons. I think the only thing that was kind of missing from James Gunn's signature style was the rotating action cam shots that we normally see in the movies. But I think that can be chalked up to a smaller budget because this isn't a blockbuster movie film. This is a HBO Max TV show. So you don't really get the same budget in the same time time to kind of push those kind of ideas out, especially for every big fight. Instead, James Gunn keeps us close to the action with this run and gun over the shoulder type of shooting, which I don't mind too much. We see this used heavily in the final fight in the butterfly arc for season 1. That's actually probably my favorite fight scene because the choreography in that is so crazy. I was like going nuts seeing Chris take out so many butterflies. There was so much killing, so much blood. It was amazing. It was a great shot. That was definitely my favorite scene of both season 1 and season 2. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was great. There was so much consistent shots, a couple oneers in there, and it was just beautifully executed. I think Peacemaker is such a unique superhero show that it has such a very specific feel to it that if you were to try and replicate it, you would have to mimic these certain things, like using handheld shots to keep it close and emotional for like all of those awkward jokes. Then it cuts immediately to wide explosive action, using natural lighting to contrast with the full metal glam type of vibes that kind of are present, especially throughout season 1. Using fast cut absurdity to linger against awkward pauses. And I think the one thing that captures the Peacemaker feel is when James Gunn let jokes hang too long to let tension like overstay its welcome until it like becomes funny again. And like scenes often cut from like hard gore into banter, from like a massacre to like just a dumb argument about rock bands. I really feel like that's what makes Peacemaker Peacemaker, is when scenes are shot like that. And that's really all I have to say about Peacemaker visually. Overall, the show itself is honestly a great watch. I had so much fun watching this show, and it kind of makes me sad and upset that I won't be hearing either theme song weekly anymore. And I'm like, damn, bro, it really grew on me. From the first time I heard the first intro, I think we all had the same thought. What the fuck am I watching? But then by the second episode, I was fully into it. Don't get me wrong here, it might be a hot take, but I like the first opening more than the second one. But regardless, they're both really good. I think now I can wholeheartedly say that I trust James Gunn as a director. Before, I kind of just saw him as a good director, and I knew that if I saw his name attached to a project, that it was probably gonna be a good project. But now I trust him in a way that if I see a project and I see the main character and it's like some tentacle cat face monster dude with a fucking fishbowl on his back full of trash can, I'm not gonna question it anymore. I just know that he's gonna make a crazy story out of it because it's James Gunn. Like I just know he's gonna make something fire with it. And with that being said, guys, here is my rating for both season 1 and season 2 for Peacemaker. For season 1, I give it an 8.5 out of 10. And for season 2, the same exact score, 8.5 out of 10. Now, here are some of my reasons why I didn't give these a 10 out of 10. For season 1 and even for a little bit of season 2, I feel like the character development was sometimes taking a back seat in favor of the visual spectacle or like tone of the story. And I kind of feel like Chris definitely got a lot more emotional exploration than any other character in the story, which rightfully so, he is the main character, I understand that, but a lot of the other characters felt lacking emotionally. A lot of support didn't get any support. It kind of felt like James Gunn did the bare minimum for all of these characters and wrapped up their story relatively quickly or prolonged it longer than what it should have. I talked about this already, but the pacing and tone shifted too fast toward the end of the first season, and that kind of just startled me and kind of finished up the season way too fast, in my opinion. But those are really like the only two things that really held it back in my eyes, especially the first one, because it kind of left the lack of impression from some of these characters. Like, not a lot of these characters outside of the main group left a lasting impression on me, to where I'm just like excited to see them in something else. Like, I would be excited to see Emilia and Adrian and of course Peacemaker in a different project, but everyone else, I could never see them again and I probably wouldn't be upset about it. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap it up for me in this Peacemaker video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a comment down below on what you thought of the season as a whole, or the season finale, or any theories on what you have of what James Gunn is going to do next with Peacemaker as a character. I would love to read them. I read every single comment. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It's great being back. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.